First off, I want to thank the grace of heaven and the virtues of the masters, the mercy of the grand predecessors, transmitting masters, and everyone here today we'll talk about this, the Maitreya Disaster Rescue Sutra. Okay, so last week, we talked about some of the things that we can do during these end times that we're in. One of the things is to recite the Maitreya Disaster Rescue Sutra. Now, last week I called it the Maitreya True Sutra. The real name is actually, it's this longer name here, Maitreya Disaster Rescue Sutra. That's one translation. You can call it, it's like, we'll get to that in a bit. But, okay, so this is something that, a sutra that, because it's the White Era Sutra, that we can recite this, every day, and it's good for us. Okay, it's also good for, well, not just us, but actually spirits around us, right, and other people. Okay, so sometimes just reciting it, that's good. Well, actually, any sutra you can recite it, and it's good for us. But sometimes, this sutra in particular, and there's a couple, maybe one or two others that also can be used or useful in certain situations as well. So just like I mentioned last week, when my mom was in the ICU, and I recited it then to kind of I guess dispel the evil spirits or something like that. Okay, so it has kind of that function as well. So it's very useful. But now there's no need to, as long as when we recite it that we are sincere. Okay, so that we have a deep sincerity. We don't necessarily have to understand the meaning, the words in the sutra. Certainly when I used it back then in the ICU, I had no understanding of the sutra, what it meant. So basically, to be effective, you don't really have to understand it. But for okay, so but the sutra does have certain profound meanings. Maybe even foretelling stuff. Now remember, this was back then. So the stuff that it foretold, most of it has already happened. But we'll get to that. Okay, so but for those people who maybe let's say Chinese is not the language you speak. So it may be, or even if it is, it may be helpful to understand what the meaning is, to helping to memorize it. Probably some people, it can help. Now, one way to memorize it, especially maybe for non-Chinese speakers, is to kind of do what I did, is basically memorize. You can memorize one or two phrases, probably just one phrase a day. Just keep reciting that one phrase a day, and then, but obviously you don't necessarily need to recognize the Chinese characters. There's the pinging. We have a sheet that's the Chinese characters with the pinging. Pinging is the romanization of the sounds, the pronunciation of the Chinese characters. You would have to learn the pinging, though. The pinging is a way to, it's kind of like, it's kind of like a language, but it's using English letters. For the most part, they sound similar to the way you pronounce in English, but there are a few that it's different. So, but it's worthwhile learning, and it's not that difficult. Once you learn it, then you can just pick up any, book, whatever that has pinging, and then you can be able to pronounce things or read it. Okay, and then but you memorize each phrase, and then it should be cumulative. So each day you add a phrase, and then you start from the beginning again, so that you don't forget the ones that you memorized earlier. And this way, it might, and so overall, it'll probably take about 3 months if you're diligent. Okay, if you're diligent, you can probably do it in 3 months. And then afterwards, and you really still need to recite it every day. Otherwise, you will forget. Okay, because just like me, I hadn't recited for a long time, and I kind of forget. I mean, it's I remember parts, and then but I couldn't kind of connect the parts, and then so then I have to kind of review it again, and then so now it's familiar, and I can recite the whole thing again. All right. Okay, so now what I'm presenting here today is based on some partly my understanding of several different you could say some translations and explanations of the sutra given by others. Okay, so there are transmitting masters and other people who've explained this in different ways, and so there are different explanations. I mean, for the most part, they pretty much cover the same things, but then there are details and things that might be a little bit different. So by no means is what I'm presenting today, is authoritative or even complete. Okay, so and also because our audience today is you have a lot of beginners too, so we can't really go into some of the too deep into it. All right. Okay, so the first thing that we have to talk about though is kind of a background on Maitreya, and especially his most recent incarnation as the 17th patriarch, what we call the 17th patriarch. Okay. All right, so in some previous cycle or kalpa, the people, or you can say the people we know as Sakyamuni Buddha and also Maitreya. Of course, they had different identities back then in different lives, but they were cultivating together, okay? And they both vowed to attain Buddhahood, so they pursued this path of becoming a Buddha. Now, of course, it takes many lifetimes of cultivation to achieve Buddhahood. And, maybe at some point, of course, in this process, they achieve a level of bodhisattva, okay, a bodhisattva, and then so they vowed to, at some point, they vowed to be reborn into the world in the current cycle, our current, basically this world cycle, the times that we're in the history that we know, to attain the final Buddhahood. Okay, so basically, they have to be. You have to be a bodhisattva for many, who knows how many lifetimes. I mean, because this cultivation process, it's basically trying to perfect our virtues, perfect our merits, and so that obviously you can't do that in one lifetime, and so it takes many lifetimes to achieve that. And then finally, so the final lifetime, if you will, of that cultivation, then you can achieve that Buddhahood. So Sakyamuni Buddha. He vowed to attain Buddhahood in the world of basically when it's still full of ignorance, okay, when it's impure. So that's roughly 2,600 years ago from today. And Maitreya, though, he vowed to attain Buddhahood when the world after the world had been transformed into a world of enlightenment, of a pure land, right? So this has yet to take place, right? So this is sometime in the future. Okay, so right now, according to the Buddhist cosmology, that there's a Tusita heaven. Tusita heaven is, they say it's there are like 6 levels of the realm of desire. Okay, so the world, this world that we live in, is also one of the realms of desire. But so there are several levels above us. In what we call the heavens, different levels of heaven, and so Tusita heaven is supposedly at the 4th level. Okay, now that's, and also according to this Buddhist cosmology, it's that this Tusita heaven is where bodhisattvas await their last rebirth into this world before attaining Buddhahood. So therefore, before Sakyamuni was born 2,600 years ago, he would have been in Tusita heaven. Okay, and then so now Maitreya, it's Maitreya's turn, and so he right now is in Tusita heaven, waiting to be reborn again. Sometime, we don't know when. Maybe he's, it's possible that he's actually already in this world, but we don't know. Okay. All right. Okay, so now let's talk about his most recent incarnation as the 17th patriarch. By the way, I use the word incarnation as opposed to reincarnation. The reincarnation typically is applied to people or sentient beings who have to reincarnate because of karma. Okay. Now Buddhas, because they're free, they're liberated. They can come and go as they can come into this world as they please and leave as they please. And so they aren't basically bound by that force of karma to cause them to be reborn, and therefore I use the word incarnation. Okay, so that some people, they use reincarnation for Buddhas, but I don't think that's right. But anyways, so his name was Lu Zhongyi. Okay, and we generally understand the year of his birth as being 1849 or maybe around 1848. Yeah, I think around 1849. But there is one explanation that I came across, and supposedly it came from this other book called the Dao Tong Bao Jian. Okay, so, but that, that in that record, in that book, it says that he was born like in 1853. So I don't know. The 1849, I think, though, is correct. According to, and also, in that explanation that I heard, apparently this book was used by the 18th patriarch. Or I don't know if how it got passed down, but the 18th patriarchs, well, he used it and he updated it with the latest, because it's supposed to be a record of all the patriarchs. Okay, the 64 generations patriarchs. But anyways, so actually some of the details in here come from an explanation that's whereas some of those details come from that book. All right, so he was born in Shandong, Jining. Okay, so this is a province in China, on the eastern coast of China. It's the birthplace of many saints and sages. Okay, so including like Confucius. So, and then obviously more in the more modern times, 17th, 18th patriarchs, they're all born there. Okay. Now, so Lu, okay, so Mr. Lu, when he was born, he had a younger sister. Now, we know that they lost their parents when they were young, maybe as teenagers. Okay, there really aren't that many details of his early life. But again, according to this aforementioned book, his parents were killed by some bandits. I guess they were robbing them. They killed them, and they burned down the house. Now I don't know where maybe he and his sister were somewhere else, or somehow they survived that incident. So anyways, once they lost their home, they lost their parents, then they had to go. They kind of went around looking for a place to stay, and obviously they had to survive on their own now. Now after a few more years, so they survived for a few years. Later, his sister was able to get married, and so at that point, obviously he didn't have to take care of his sister anymore, and so he went off on his own and joined the army at that point. This was when he was 22. Okay, so and he joined the army as a cook, basically. Right. Now, so while he's in the army, it's kind of uneventful. But so he had been once he had been in the army for like 20 years, and I believe he may have been promoted and maybe have become an officer. But the standard telling of the story says that he saved up 100 ounces of silver. Okay, back then the currency in China, they used I don't know, it's ounces. They use the term teal, T-A-E-L, teal of silver. It's like an ounce, I guess. But that was the currency they used. Now, but that's, the up until, recently, I always heard it was just 100 ounces. Now, but apparently according to this other book, that he had saved up 240 ounces of silver. All right. Now, this might actually be more correct, because basically for 20 years, he saved up this, this is his savings. His salary would have been about 1 ounce of silver per month, okay, if it was 240. If it was 100, then, it would have been a lot less. And that, I don't know, that's likely, but, okay. But anyways, in 1895, okay, so after 20 years in the army, in 1895, Laomu, or God, basically instructed him in a dream, okay, that the time is urgent and he needs to go seek the Tao, receive the Tao from the 16th patriarch, and to fulfill his mission. Okay, so obviously up until then, he didn't know anything about Tao. Basically, he didn't even know what his purpose was in life. So it's interesting to note that, even though he was a Mahasattva, Maitreya was a Mahasattva, okay, a great Bodhisattva. And once you're born into this world, though, basically you forget everything. For the most part, most, probably 99.999% of people, they forget who they are, who they were, or why they're here. And so, in this, usually, so this is usually the case. And then so they need some kind of hint or reminder to kind of wake them up to their real purpose of why they're here, in this world. So, for example, like Sakyamuni, Siddhartha, or before he was Sakyamuni, Siddhartha, right? He started on a path of cultivation only after witnessing the sufferings in life, right? So he had that curiosity to go out, leave the palace to see what the real world was like, and he saw suffering, and that kind of, you can kind of say, it kind of woke him up and set him on the path of cultivation and seeking the truth. Okay, so the sixth patriarch Huineng, he also the same, similar. But he was awakened by hearing someone reciting the Diamond Sutra. Okay, so even though he was an illiterate, but hearing that somehow woke him up, realized that he wants to be a Buddha. Okay, and then okay, so the other thing to note also is the living conditions in which these bodhisattvas are born. Now, generally, if you look at Sakyamuni, that's usually different from what most of them are born into. So Sakyamuni, he was born as a prince, right, which is not very typical. But it served the purpose of his mission in life, which is to realize the true meaning of life by kind of his way was experiencing kind of both extremes, like the very good life and the life of extreme asceticism, which is what he pursued after he left the palace. Okay, and then so because the reason why this type of being born into that situation is not typical is because it's very easy to become lost in the world of fame, fortune, materialism, all that stuff. When you have it, right? When you're born into it, and you have such a good life, luxury, comfort, you certainly don't. Most people would not give that up. Okay, so they'll just want to continue to pursue that. And so bodhisattvas in general, they would not they would not be born into this world into such a situation, into such a family or household. Okay. So maybe that's why the 17th patriarch chose to be born into having an early life of poverty. Okay, because they can choose, they can choose where where they're born, what kind of situations that they're going to be in. All right. So now, even though he had forgotten what his purpose was in life, because of his a spiritual foundation, right? Because obviously he was a bodhisattva. He has that foundation that he was, he could accept Lamu's instructions. Now, there is a telling of the story that says that he really didn't think much of the dream at first, and that Lamu was persistent and kind of gave him that dream 3 nights in a row to try to convince him that, have him try to make sure that he woke up to this reality. But whatever the case, he did follow the instructions. Okay. So now it's important to know that bodhisattvas, okay, or Buddhas. I mean, Buddhas usually they will not get lost. Once you're a Buddha and you come back to this world, you probably will not get lost again. All right, because but a bodhisattva could still get lost. So if a bodhisattva is born in this world and they don't cultivate, right? They don't receive the Tao. They don't cultivate. Then they can still forget. Basically, they've forgotten their vows. I mean, they come with a vow, okay? And so they've forgotten their vow. And if you forget your vow and you don't fulfill your vow, then you're not going back, basically. I mean, you can't return back to to heaven or to be, to your original position as a bodhisattva anymore. So that's so it's important for us. Like, hey, any of us could be bodhisattvas reborn, okay? But if we don't realize it, if we don't wake up to that fact, then we may not cultivate hard enough for us to go back to fulfill our vows and to return. So it's important that we try to become awakened to that. Okay. So now. When he was in the army, now Mr. Liu, he was stationed in Tianjin. Okay, so Tianjin is, I guess it's kind of like a little bit northwest of the Shandong, the place that he was going to, and so it's about like, I don't know, not the straight line is probably like 300 kilometers, but if you're taking back then, he would probably have to walking. Okay, he probably had to walk, and so it's probably more like 400 to 500 kilometers, which is about 250 to 300 miles away. So, that's quite a trek. I mean, it take a little while. Now, if he didn't know where to go next, each day, at night, he would have a dream that gave him further instructions about, where to go the next day. Okay, so eventually he reached the place of the 16th patriarch, where he asked to receive the Tao. Now, because the 16th patriarch, obviously didn't recognize him, didn't know who he was, you can say he tested him by saying, well, the merit fee is, you can receive the Tao, but there's a merit fee, and it's 100 ounces of silver. Okay, so he thought that maybe, Mr. Liu, he probably couldn't afford it because he kind of looked like a farmer, a peasant, and he probably couldn't afford it, and that he would just leave. But Mr. Liu said, okay, he had. So according to, again, that one telling, the normal way of telling the story is that he happened to have 100 ounces of silver, and so I don't know. This kind of makes for a good story, but I'm not sure that that's accurate. But anyways, he gave the 100 ounces of silver, and according to the book, he had 240. So he gave 100, and then the other 140 he also gave to support the temple. Okay, but so whatever the case, the true story is, it shows that Mr. Liu was worthy of receiving the Tao. He was very, sincere, and so I mean this is not easy, right? Considering that it took him 10 years to save that amount of money, right? Think about it. If we were required to pay 10 years of our wages as merit fee, nobody would receive the Tao, right? I mean that's so it just goes to show you that he had that utmost sincerity and faith. All right, and you could say he's also very magnanimous, right? He's willing to give it all, give it away. So this is also kind of similar to the sixth patriarch story when he went to see the fifth patriarch and said he wanted to become a Buddha. What I mean is that there's a test, okay, that the fifth patriarch tested him, saying that, oh, how can a barbarian, because the sixth patriarch, he came from the south of like in the Guangdong province area, and they were up in north, so they considered them barbarians. Says, how can they become enlightened? But Huineng, okay, so this that was his name before he's sixth patriarch, said that, well, we all have different appearances, backgrounds, but we all have the same Buddha nature. So, he said, obviously he gave a very good answer, and so fifth patriarch accepted him. So, all right. But anyways, all right, so Mr. Lu, he stayed to work in the kitchen at the temple where of the sixth patriarch. And because that's pretty much, that's what he was doing in the army, so that's what he knew what to do. Again, that's similar to the sixth patriarch, actually, who also worked in the kitchen. He actually worked the whole time in the kitchen while he was at the monastery until it was time for him to receive the mandate from the fifth patriarch. So in this case, Mr. Lu worked in the kitchen for 10 years, and actually, many bodhisattvas of the white era. So in this era, the time that we're in, these modern times that we're living in, a lot of whether it's like maybe predecessors, the elders in the Tao, a lot of them also were working in the kitchen, and they become bodhisattvas. Okay, so it's not, working in the kitchen is not just because, it's not. I mean, we should not look down upon that type of work. Okay, all right. Okay, so in 1905, it was time. So after the 10 years, in 1905, it was time for the mandate to pass on from the sixth patriarch to his successor. Now, Laomu, or God, had given him a dream or passed him a message saying that, well, it's time to pass on this mandate. And he kind of was given a hint using Mr. Lu Zhongyi's his name as kind of in a puzzle, if you will, trying to hint that he's the one. Okay, but the 16th patriarch, he didn't understand that. He didn't kind of figure out that puzzle, or maybe he didn't believe it. Then Lamu again told him a little bit, well, in a different way. He says that, okay, so this man, or this 17th patriarch, he's the one where on his hand, you see these two Chinese characters I have on the slide there, two lines from the bottom, second line from the bottom. These two characters, which is He Tong, okay, and that these would be the markings on that person's hand, on his palms, the left palm and the right palm. Now, okay, according to the telling from this book, right, it says this happened, this happened in a dream on the 14th day of the third lunar month. Okay, so the next day would have been the 15th, which is the full moon, and that the 15th of the third lunar month is also what we call this the day of the spring observance. Okay, so that's one of the, I don't know, we consider, like, God or Lamu has like 4 birthdays, even though Lamu doesn't have any birthdays, but we kind of celebrate these 4, basically one for each season. But anyway, so so what happened was the 16th patriarch, he asked everyone to, well, for on the 15th, the morning of the 15th, to wash their hands in preparation for the kato, but he used that kind of as an excuse to examine their hands. He wanted to see, if what the dream he had was right, was true. Okay, so they all lined up, and the patriarch inspected their hands. Now, after he checked everyone's hands, he didn't see the symbols, and so he asked if everyone was present. Then someone said, oh no, there's actually one person still in the kitchen. So it was actually Mr. Lu. He was still in the kitchen, and so he was told to wash his hands and come out. And so when 16th patriarch examined his hands, and he saw the markings on his palms. All right, so he knew then that Mr. Lu was the 17th patriarch. Now, actually, I don't know, those two characters, it's kind of hard to imagine that, you you would see those symbols on someone's palms, because, if I look at my palms, I see kind of like mostly like 3 lines, curved lines. But anyways, I don't know, maybe, his hand wasn't fully washed, a little bit dirty, they had markings on it, and so it looked like that. But in any case, it was the right person. Okay, so he was the one who's to be the 17th patriarch. So definitely, the mandate then was passed on to the 17th patriarch, and 16th patriarch told him to then return to Jining, which is I think back towards the south a little bit, to begin his mission and propagate the Tao. All right, so basically the 17th patriarch's mission would run for 20 years, so from 1905 and ending in 1925. All right, and we'll come back to, I think we'll come back to part of this story when we talk about the sutra. Okay. Let's see. All right. So after, yeah. Okay. So Maitreya actually, there's this saying, the so-called golden rooster crows 3 times. Okay, this is actually mentioned in a book, Answers to the Truth. Okay, or I think that comes from 90 questions or 99 questions. But Maitreya is supposed to appear in this world 3 times during the White Era. Okay, so this would not be counting his time as his incarnation as the 17th patriarch. All right. Now, even though he was born, actually, I think he was born in the year of the rooster. Okay, but we can't count the incarnation of the 17th patriarch as this first crowing. Okay, of 3 crowings, because the thing is, the third crowing, or the final, third and final crowing, is when Maitreya appears in the world at the time of the final calamity. All right, so obviously, okay, that hasn't happened yet. Now, but then, if that's the third, then there are 2 other crowings. Now, after the 17th patriarch returned to heaven in 1925, his spirit came back twice through some special channeling. Okay, so those 2 times that he channeled would be the first and second crowing. Okay, so anyways, we're still waiting for the third crowing, which we don't know when that's going to happen. Okay, so the special channeling, the first time in 1926 is for 100 days. 100 days straight. Okay, so, and then the second time, I'm not exactly sure, but it wasn't probably too long after that. It was for 30 days. Okay. Now, in these channeling visitations, right, it's not like the channeling through a holy medium that today, that happens for a few hours. Basically, it was 100 days straight. Okay, without leaving. Okay, so now Maitreya probably chose the specific persons because they had the right affinity, I guess. So in the first instance, the channeling happened through a cultivator from Sanxi by the name of Yang Chunling. Okay, now this person was a cultivator, but he was a stranger to. I mean, the 17th patriarch's followers. They don't recognize this person. Okay, so basically, this Mr. Yang, he went over to the temple that the 17th patriarch's followers were at, and he showed up and claimed that he was the 17th patriarch, or at least his spirit, right? Okay, so of course they, because they didn't recognize him, they didn't believe him. But once he started talking about the things that they knew about the 17th patriarch, then they were kind of convinced, okay, that it was the 17th patriarch, in fact. Okay, so and by the way, this is kind of like I don't know. It kind of reminded me of the resurrection of Jesus. You know, when he reappears to his disciples 3 days after his death. Okay, so again, it's kind of something kind of similar, right? So now during this 100 days of channeling, Maitreya spoke this彌勒救苦真經, which is this Maitreya Disaster Rescue Sutra that we're talking about today, and also another thing called the 未来妙典, or the 精公妙典, which is it's basically like the profound, the future profound scripture, or I guess later they call it the 精公 profound scripture. Okay, because basically 精公,精公it is the title that Lamu, or God, had bestowed upon the 17th patriarch after he returned to heaven when he completed that mission. Right, so his title was Jingong Patriarch. And you notice that that's not a Buddha title. Okay, so that's not a title of a Buddha. So because again, he's not yet, right? He's still waiting for the one last rebirth to become a Buddha. Right. So then once that happens, then he will have a real Buddha title. All right. Okay. Now, okay. It's and he probably. Okay. So this, yeah, that profound scripture thing that kind of elaborated on some of the things in this Maitreya Sutra, True Sutra that we're talking about, and also talked about a few other things. Now this sutra, this profound scripture also mentions that Maitreya had 13 rebirths in China, just only in China, and that includes the 17th patriarch. Okay, now that doesn't include the incarnations in India or as anywhere else. Now, I've heard it said that Maitreya had been born in this world 72 times. So he now obviously, so even of those 13 rebirths, we only know that's recorded, only of 4 of them. Okay, so they're obviously, when he's born in this world, he's not going to announce himself, say, "Oh, I'm the Maitreya." Usually, these Buddhas or Bodhisattvas who incarnate in the world, they don't announce themselves like that. And if we hear someone who claims that they are Buddha or whatever, then it's most likely they're not, and they're fake. Okay, so yeah, if you hear that, you probably should stay away from them. All right. Okay, so the other thing that he had some kind of special ability when he channeled during that 100 days. Right, he could write with both hands at the same time using these large calligraphy brushes. Okay, so that's something that's it would probably be impossible for a normal human to do. Okay, so obviously he demonstrated that he was not an ordinary person. Right. Okay. Let's see. All right, so the sutra, there are a total of 72 phrases, 72 plus 1. So there's like one at the end, which is a little bit different. Okay, so so it's a total of like 504 words, and then plus the 10 words of the last phrase. Now, the 72 phrases they have pairs, so it's like 36 pairs. So this is kind of like a Chinese poetic form. Okay, now the first section, which basically I think the first 16 phrases is basically about talking about the patriarchs and their mission. Okay, this universal salvation mission. Then the next section, which is I think also about 16 phrases, talks about the 3 treasures and cultivation. Okay. Then the sections after that, okay, since I haven't prepared those up to those yet, so but basically I think there's a big section. There's a section. The next section seems to be talking about this heavens providing support for this mission, fulfilling this mission, and then there's the next section is about kind of Maitreya's final appearance, okay, in this white era. Of course, this isn't. It doesn't say. The sutra does not say, when that's going to happen. It's just saying that, when during that time, this there's some things might happen. Okay, so and then finally there's like, it seems like a kind of like a summary or conclusion of the whole sutra. Okay. There also, one thing to note is that if you go looking around and you find this Maitreya, this sutra, you'll find slight variations of the sutra. Okay, so I mean they're basically the same, but there are a few phrases where the words are, slightly different. And I mean most of it, they mean the same thing, but there might be some difference. Okay, so the problem is we're kind of removed from that era. Obviously, that the time when this is like 1926, so it's almost 100 years ago, and the recording, who recorded it, and I guess later on so I don't know if they have supposedly. Okay, so the one of the explanations I listened to, I think is a transmitting master in the Linging Si, that group and that lineage. He claims that they have like the original sutra, and so I don't know. We'll see when we get there and see what the actual sutra, the right correct words are. Okay. All right. All right, so here's the beginning of the sutra. Says, all right, so the first, these are the first two phrases. So it says, 佛说弥勒, right, 佛说弥勒救苦经, and then 弥勒下世不废经. Okay, so 佛 means Buddha, all right. Sorry, I didn't put in the tones on the pinging, so the thing in parentheses, those are the pinging that I mentioned before. So, but there would be tone marks on those because they're in Chinese. They're like 4 tones. So, but it's too much work. I didn't have time to do that. But anyway, so 佛 means Buddha. Okay, 说 you can say that just means to talk, to speak. 弥勒, okay, that's Maitreya, and then 救苦, okay, I put them together. It's basically to save or rescue from suffering, disaster, calamity, etc. Okay, so obviously to save from suffering or rescue from suffering, that's probably more accurate, but it wouldn't sound good in the title. So I just say disasters, rescue. Use those 2 words, and then Jing means sutra, and actually, Zhen Jing, okay, which means true. Well, the 2 words mean true sutra. Is actually, it actually just Zhen Jing means also just sutra. Okay, so if you look it up, you'll see it just says sutra. So actually, when we say Maitreya true sutra, that's kind of redundant. It's really just Maitreya sutra when we say弥勒真经. But yeah. But the full title, of course, is the弥勒救苦真经. All right. Now, okay, and then 下世 means to descend to the world, to be reborn, be born into this world, and then 不废经 it just says it's not a light matter. Okay, so this is a very significant event. Okay, so the title, Buddha. So basically, Buddha speaking this sutra. Other, yeah, you could say Maitreya, because basically after he completed his mission as 17th patriarch, you could say he's basically a Buddha, even though he didn't the title Jingong Zusi is not really a Buddha title, but he technically, I mean, he really is a Buddha. Okay, so he is speaking this sutra, and let's see, okay, okay, and then so the coming of Maitreya is of great significance. That's the second phrase. So why? It's because he's ushering in the white era. So he's the start. So 1905, when he got the mandate, that was the start of the official start of the white era. Okay, and so it's already 115 years, all right, since the start of the white era, and so that also paved the way for universal salvation. So during the 17th Patriarch's time, I guess you could say, well, okay, so actually, yeah, we kind of distinguish too. We say, yeah, there's universal salvation, meaning that, anyone who has the affinity can receive the Tao. And then sometimes we say universal salvation of the three realms during the time of the 18th Patriarch and Matriarch, basically meaning that, yeah, not just humans can receive the Tao, but also the spirits in the underworld and in, like, the celestial heavens. So, and that that they do that, they can get the Tao by what we call uplifting. All right, but anyways, yeah. So but basically he's paving, because he's also this Maitreya. He has, I mean, his mandate is not to spread the Tao, but his mandate is he has what we call holds the mandate for the heavenly post. Okay, so that's like he's in charge of this whole white era. Okay, so, and then, but the 18th Patriarch and Matriarch, they have the mandate to basically transmit the Tao. So they have the Tao post of Tao transmission during this time. And so they're more the ones responsible for transmitting the Tao and spreading it, this universal transmission, propagation of the Tao. All right. Okay, so now, why did it happen in why did he get this mandate in 1905, which is, it could be kind of arbitrary, but it's not really. It turns out it's a very significant year because it was also the beginning of a new scientific era, along with the ability for man to destroy the world. Okay, so there are no coincidences, really. Everything kind of happens according to affinity and karma. So Maitreya's mission is to save sentient beings from disasters and suffering. So this is the purpose. There's that purpose. Now, 1905, there's a significant thing that occurred then. We all know who Albert Einstein is. Now, that's when he published some famous theories. Basically, he published his theory about special relativity. He published a paper on quantum theory of light, which is the foundation for one of the foundations of modern physics. And he also published another paper, which kind of sounds just, like just physics. It says, the title is, Does the Inertia of a Body Depend Upon Its Energy Content? Okay, it's kind of, sounds like just a physics problem. But actually, it contains the now famous equation E equals mc squared. Okay, so this simple equation ushered in a new age of physics and its consequences. Namely, the creation of, atomic and nuclear weapons, right? Weapons of mass destruction. So perhaps this was already a foregone conclusion for the fate of the world, as was mentioned in other scriptures, like in Revelations, where it talks about the four winds and all that, and Armageddon, right? And actually, in a lot of these scriptures that we have in the Tao, whether it's from Laomu, God, or others, Buddhas and saints, they talk about the end, that final calamity, which sounds like it would be a nuclear war. Okay, so and there would be a lot of death and destruction there. Okay, so all right, let's continue here. All right, so the next phrase. So it says Ling Bao Qi Lu Ling San Di. Okay, so Ling means, well, literally it can mean collar, it can mean to receive, to accept, or to lead. Okay, Bao is precious or treasure. Qilu is another name for Shandong province, so it's referring to the same location, okay, that area. And then Linsandi, that is actually referring to, well, okay, on the one hand, it refers to the Spirit Peak or Spirit Vulture Peak in India, or whatever, northern India, wherever, where Buddha, that was a popular or common place where he would give his teachings, the Dharma, okay, including the flower sermon, right? But it also refers to the place of our spirit, our soul, true nature, okay. Okay, so basically saying that having this heaven's mandate to, and then the Bao part, the treasure that is referring to the three treasures, right? So this is you can say it was being transmitted in that Qilu, that location, the Shandong province. Okay, so this, okay, so basically, you can say that 17th patriarch, because having the mandate for the heavenly post, he was kind of like, we want to use like an analogy here. He was like the captain or navigator of a boat, right? We typically talk about the Dharma boat. The Dharma boat is out in the bitter sea, rescuing sentient beings. Okay, so, and so he's navigating of the boat, and whereas 18th patriarch and matriarch, they have the mandate of the Tao transmission post, so they are kind of the ones pulling these people out of the sea, the bitter sea, okay, rescuing them, all right? So that's kind of the one way to look at it. All right, so basically, yeah, the three treasures, the idea of transmitting the three treasures is, that's what can give us this salvation, right? So, and now the Tao is being propagated everywhere, and only those, anyone who has that affinity and the sincerity can receive the three treasures, okay, and gain salvation. Of course, it's not just you receive the three treasures and then that's it, and you're going to be saved. We have to we have to cultivate. Okay, so there's like I said earlier, Buddhas, even Bodhisattvas, when they are born in this world, they have to cultivate and they have to perform merits to return back. Okay, so if they have to do it, I mean, we have to do it even more. Okay, so and then that Linsandi again, that can refer to the place where we can attain Buddhahood. So basically, pointing to that heavenly portal. All right, first treasure. Okay. All right. So the next phrase, 拈花应正考三圣. Okay, so this is basically 拈 means to grasp with the fingers, and then 花 is a flower. So 应正 is like proof, evidence, to confirm or verify. 考 is a test. And then 三圣 or 三乘 means Triana, which is the three vehicles of cultivation, the small, middle, and great. Okay. All right, so this, okay, so this basically cultivators, so basically that 拈花应正, directly, you can say that refers to Buddha's flower sermon, okay, and so this is saying that maybe the cultivators we will be tested, and then tested at the three different levels, okay, the three vehicles, right? So in the Buddha's flower sermon, right, he held, this is at that Spirit Peak or Vulture Peak, where he held a flower in front of his face. And he just sat there and didn't say anything. And basically, he was waiting for, you can say, a response from someone to show that, see if anyone is enlightened. All right. So it turns out there was one, which is one of his disciples, Mahakasyapa. Okay. So he smiled when he saw that. He understood what Buddha meant, what the meaning was behind that. Okay. So. And then Buddha spoke these words, right? I possess the true Dharma, the marvelous mind of Nirvana, the true form of the formless, the subtle Dharma gate, not found in words, but is a special transmission outside of the scriptures. Okay, and then actually, then right after that he says, this I entrust to Mahakasyapa. Okay, so he basically, through that, interaction, if you will, the wordless interaction between Buddha and Mahakasyapa, he transmitted the mandate to Mahakasyapa. Okay, so basically he verified, and Buddha, essentially certified Mahakasyapa as being, he's worthy and he's enlightened. Okay, so basically Mahakasyapa realized that there's something else, that's basically what Buddha is saying, that there is this, the true Dharma, the marvelous mind of Nirvana, the true form of the formless, right? The subtle Dharma gate not found in words. Okay, so there's something there. There's something, this true nature, the Buddha nature that we have. All right. Now, there is another kind of like a subtle, interpretation of this flower sermon that I saw too. It says, the Buddhist, he starts by not saying anything, right? And just holding the flower in front of his face, right? So this can represent basically the highest vehicle, okay? So, or it can represent heaven's mandate, or the heavenly portal, or that true nature, that essence, right? That true essence that we have, right? And then when Mahakasyapa smiled, right, that represented the middle vehicle, or this mind-to-mind transmission, which it was. There was basically a connection, a mind-to-mind connection between Buddha and Mahakasyapa, like a mutual understanding, if you will, a meeting of minds. And it also could represent just, the mind aspect. So basically our essence, or our true nature aspect, our mind aspect, and then finally when Buddha spoke, that can represent the lower vehicle, or also the lineage of Tao, or the transmission of the mandate, or the body. Okay, so if you remember, well, usually when we explain the three treasures, we talk about those as like basically the true nature, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, right? So so these are three aspects of our being, actually. So these three, we are composed of three. It's like 3 in 1. Okay, so that's all right. So that's just kind of a little bit more subtle way of interpreting that. Now the three vehicles, or you can say, so in one explanation, it talks about them as these three. Well, you can say that it says Kyle Sanson. So it's 3 tests of, you can say, like at the 3 different levels of the 3 different vehicles. Okay, so and also, or you can say that and then if you pass these tests, okay, then maybe you can achieve these different levels of achievements. Okay. Now the lower vehicle test. Okay, so that is basically to see if cultivators can uphold or the precepts or maintain their vows. Okay, so that's like the precept or vow test, I would say. And so 17th Patriarch, I don't know exactly when this happened, but it's probably later on in his mission that he gave this test, okay, to his disciples. Basically, one day he convened everyone together, and he said that, wow, cultivation, it's very difficult. So why don't we can relax a little bit, so why don't we eat meat buns? Okay, so but basically, all these his disciples, obviously the patriarch, his disciples, they all would have taken vows, the vegan vow. Okay, so but he's testing them, and he says, hey, it's cultivation is already too difficult. Let's eat meat. All right, and so but obviously everyone, they're afraid. They knew they took the vow. They can't break the vow, right? And so the 17th Patriarch, he says, what are you disobeying, right? Because now, in at least in the Chinese culture, right, teachers or masters are very you have to listen to them. I mean, they're like your parents. Okay, so you have to listen. You really have to listen to them. I mean, to disobey a teacher is a big, that's a big no-no, right? But so he kind of set an example. He said, "Oh, okay, here, I'll show you." He took a bite out of a bun himself, and then so that kind of, then the others they said, oh, okay, so it looks like, the patriarch, he did it, he ate it, so, we can eat it too. So now, the only, so now two of his disciples, which are later the 18th patriarch and matriarch, they, I guess because they had the wisdom, I guess, that they passed the test. They kind of excused themselves from eating meat. They said, I'm not feeling well. My stomach is, I have a stomach ache. I can't eat it now. So they kind of excused themselves. But whereas the others, and it's also, turns out that they are also the youngest of the main disciples. I think Maitreya had, or 17th Patriarch had like 8 main disciples, and these two were the youngest of the disciples. But the other ones, they all broke their vows basically, eating the meat buttons. So they failed that test. All right. Now the second level test, you can say, is kind of testing the authority or the title or position after 17th Patriarch's passing. Okay, so because what happened was the 17th Patriarch did not pass on the mandate to the 18th Patriarch or Matriarch. Okay, so remember he passed in 1925. The 18th Patriarch and Matriarch got their mandate actually in 1930. So there was like at least 5 years since his passing. So what happened was when he passed away, obviously his disciples, they wanted to know who has the mandate, right? Because you still have to have this mandate. And they were impatient. And so they, through a sandwriting, this is a way of communicating with God, Lamu, and the Buddhas and saints. They asked Lamu, who has this mandate? At first, Lamu says, "Oh, you have to wait 100 days." Okay, basically after a passing of someone, usually you have to wait 100 days to ask that person or the spirit of that of the person that you can communicate with that the spirit. Okay, so but they were impatient, and so they asked again. They asked Lamu again before 100 days was up. And so Lamu, I guess you could say, I don't know, angry or I don't know, Lamu gets angry, but was maybe got impatient or whatever with them, and says, or wanted to test them, says, okay, fine, you guys all have the mandate. You go out and propagate the Tao. And so they were happy to hear that, and they went out to propagate the Tao. Now, I forgot to say that in the first time. So basically, Lamu also said that. During this time, that basically they needed to wait. Okay, so after 17th Patriarch's passing in 1925, they were originally supposed to wait like 12 years. Okay, and so Lamu said, remember 17th Patriarch's sister. Okay, so sister later she like went into like a convent or whatever to cultivate. Okay, so. But Lamu said that, well, she temporarily will hold the mandate until the 18th Patriarch gets the mandate. All right, so that was supposed to be like 12 years. Now I guess because the most of the disciples, they didn't believe that. So but once again, 18th Patriarch and Matriarch, they passed the test. They didn't. When Lamu said, "Oh yeah, you all have the mandate, go out and propagate Tao," they didn't do that. They still followed the earlier instruction, saying, "Oh, okay, so you go to 17th Patriarch's sister." By the way, the sister turns out to be the incarnation of Guanyin Bodhisattva. Okay, so or Guanyin Buddha. But anyways, so that's yet another test. So basically, testing to see. This is kind of testing for authority, I guess. Testing. People, right? We talk about we should not strive or desire to gain power and authority, that kind of thing. And so that's what these disciples, they were looking for, I guess. So so they didn't pass that test, right? Now the higher level, you can say one more test. The third test is kind of you can say a test of the lineage. Okay, so who's this patriarch? This is basically, this is basically, testing the 18th patriarch. So they're like different aspects of this. Testing the 18th patriarch. 18th patriarch, he wanted to uplift his father, right? He had heard that, because he lost his father when he was young too, and he felt that he did not perform his filial duties. So he wanted to uplift his father, but it was said, the requirement was to ferry 100 people to receive the Tao in order to do that. Now, try as he might, over 3 years, he ferried like his elders, his relatives, everyone in his family he could find to keep ferry, and it was only like he could only get 64 people. But he persisted, and actually, eventually, Lamu, God, kind of said, okay, that's enough. 64 is, all you need is 64, and so he was able to uplift his father. You could say, and then the test of the 18th matriarch. Now, when 17th patriarch ferried her to receive the Tao, okay, at the time she was actually considered by many as a living female bodhisattva. Okay, before she received the Tao, and she already had like 1,000 followers. But when the 17th patriarch came to ferry her, she realized that the 17th patriarch was true, and what he's talking about was all true, and so she was willing to then basically accept him as her master, and so she and her followers, they all received the Tao, and so before the 17th patriarch left, he promoted matriarch to, I think at the time it would be the equivalent to like a transmitting master we have today, where she can propagate the Tao. Okay. But anyways, after 6 years, Lamu then decreed that both the 18th patriarch, so this is directly from Lamu now, that 18th patriarch, matriarch, they are to have this mandate, the heavenly mandate, okay, as be the next patriarchs. Now, some of the senior disciples came back and recognized the 18th patriarch and matriarch, as the patriarchs and matriarchs, but some did not. Okay, so you can say that's another test for those disciples, and there actually, one group also refused to believe that the matriarch could have the mandate. I mean, because up until then, they were all patriarchs, all men. Okay, so this is the first time there was a female having the mandate. So they thought, that how could that be? Even to today, okay, so even to today, there's still a group who does not recognize matriarch's mandate. Okay, so they just don't believe it. All right. Okay, so anyways, the passing of the mandate from the 17th to 18th patriarchs is important. Although the 17th patriarch, he didn't pass it himself. He didn't do the passing of himself. But because of the significance of basically the 18th patriarch, matriarchs, their mission of universal salvation. Okay, so okay. All right, so the next two phrases is 落在中原三庆地, and then 大正四川王讨行. Okay, so this is okay. So 落 or lao means to drop or to fall, and 在 is at, and then 中央 or 中原, it's actually a region that includes western Shandong province. Okay, so and then 三庆地 is like the 3-star place. Okay. Da is great or big, and Zhen is like to prove or verify, prove. Okay, so Sichuan is the Sichuan province. Wang Tao that's also a place in Sichuan. Okay, and then Xing is the heart, mind, or core. Okay, these two phrases, they're kind of like the bookends. They serve as like the bookends to 18th Patriarch's mission from the 1930s to 1947. Okay, so because the first one kind of refers to the beginning of his mission, and the second one refers to the end of his mission. Okay, so the first phrase, right, points to the start of the widespread propagation of Tao in Tianjin. Okay, so that's where he went, and that's where it kind of really, you can say the ball got rolling, so to speak, that Tao started spreading very quickly from that point. And then, okay, so and then the second phrase kind of points to the completion of his mission and when he went to Sichuan. All right. Okay, so the 3-star inn, that's the name of this. It's the name of a real inn in Tianjin. Okay, the city of Tianjin. It's not a star rating. Okay, but actually, it's not the star rating of that inn. But but actually, if we were to give it a star rating, from a Tao perspective, it would be a 5-star inn, because that's where you can say a lot of the propagation of Tao all over China. Basically, I don't know, but most of it, started from there. All right, so okay. Now, so in 1934, Suzun. Okay, Suzun means is the 18th Patriarch. Okay, so okay, so sorry. Let me just mention the other kind of meaning, I guess, of no, wait. All right, never mind. Let me just go into the story here. So basically, there's this Daoqin. This is 1934, I think. Daoqin, Mr. Liu Shangqian. Okay, so basically, he was listening. He had listened to the classes. I don't know if they had Dharma classes then, but had classes in Jinan, which is in the south, but he wanted to pioneer Tao in Tianjin. Okay, even though he'd never been there, he didn't know anyone there, but he got Suzun, the 18th Patriarch's permission to go, and so Suzun also gave him a book to take with him. This is a book that, I don't know, Suzun usually he would read from this book. And then so after Mr. Liu settled down in Tianjin, he would go to the park every day and read the book. Right? He didn't approach anyone to receive the Tao, but he just waited. It's kind of like a fisherman patiently waiting for fish to take the bait, right? And so finally, after 100 days, a person by the name of, I guess, Ren Shi Sun. Okay, so he passed through that park every day, and he saw this man sitting on the bench reading a book. And so, he approached Mr. Liu and asked him, about the book that he was reading. So, they kind of struck up a conversation, and Mr. Liu felt that maybe this Mr. Ren, had affinity, so he tried to ferry him to receive the Tao. And Mr. Ren, he agreed to receive the Tao, but Mr. Liu said that, well, one person receiving the Tao is not enough, since he had to invite Suzun up here, from where he was to Tianjin. Okay, so, and it's probably, a long distance away. So he asked Mr. Lin to get more people to receive the Tao before he can invite Suzun. Okay, so now among the people he found to receive the Tao was an innkeeper. Okay, the owner of this Sanxing Kezan. Okay, so basically this inn, all right, this 3-star inn. He's the owner of it, and so then Mr. Liu invited Suzun to come to Tianjin to perform the Tao transmission, and they set up a provisional temple at that 3-star inn. After they received the Tao, the innkeeper was so inspired that he wanted to keep the temple. Okay, so so usually when we travel, go to somewhere where there's no temple, we can set up kind of a provisional temple. It's just basically the altar, okay, with the 3 lamps and all that. And because in our case, like the transmitting master, they perform the invocation, which then sanctifies the place, and it can be used as a temple temporarily. Because once the lamps are, the flames are put out, then it's no longer a temple. Okay, so But so that's what they had set up initially. But the owner of the three-star inn, he was inspired. He wanted to keep that temple for and so Sujun, he thought he allowed him to keep it, and basically he bestowed the name of San Yi Tan. Okay, the San Yi Tan, which is 3-1 temple. Okay, so 3 meaning the 3-star, the 3, basically indicating the 3-star inn, and then the 1 meaning that it's the first temple in Tianjin. Okay, so this was the first temple that was established. It was basically a family temple. Okay, so it's not a public temple in Tianjin. All right, now the subtle meaning of the Zhongyuan Sanxing Di is also, you can say, kind of refers to the heavenly portal as well, the doorway of the soul in birth and death. Okay, so a lot of the sutras generally they have like kind of like the superficial meaning, if you look at the words superficially, and then there's kind of a more profound meaning that is there as well, that most people will not pick up on. Okay, so all right, now the second phrase, the first 2 words, realize, refer to, like, you could say, the final realization or the proof of fulfilling the mission by Sujun. Okay, so in December 1946, Sujun traveled to Sichuan, Chengdu, the city Chengdu. All right, so to prepare for a New Year celebration. Then in August of 1947, there was a person named Mr. Li. He had prepared a house for Sujun in a place called Wangjia Tang. Okay, Wangjia Tang. So Sujun asked Mr. Li what this place was called, and Mr. Li said it's called Wangjia Tang. And now, upon hearing this name, Sujun kind of immediately felt uncomfortable. All right. So as soon as Sujun stepped foot on the property, he saw a tree with a strange-looking fruit that just fell to the ground. Now, to him, he knew that this was not a good sign. Okay, it was a bad omen. Now, since he was a patriarch, he has wisdom. He's his mind is clear. It's connected to heaven. Okay, so it's he has great awareness. So he knew that it was kind of time for him to leave this world. Now, it was August 15th, basically the lunar 15th, basically the mid-autumn or the harvest moon day or festival. Right, so he invited some officials and nearby the Dao elders and Dao Chenan to have a lunch. So this is kind of like the Last Supper that Jesus had with his disciples, right? So it's the last meal that the patriarch would have with his disciples and followers. So he didn't want to alarm his followers, right? He gave a speech, he talked. He didn't say directly that he was leaving, but he did hint at it. I mean, he says basically, he said, 精粹, 鞠躬精粹, and then so 死而后已. Okay, so basically what that means is basically sparing no effort until one's dying day. All right, so obviously when people hear that, I was like, well, this is not something you would say normally. It sounds like something that you would say, near the end of your days. So the followers were a bit taken aback. But after lunch, the guests, they were leaving, and Sujun said he wasn't feeling too well, and so he went to take a nap. Later in the afternoon, Sujun still hadn't woken up, and so his followers, felt there was something wrong. So then, the matriarch was also there, Simu. So she led everyone to Katal to plead, to beg God, Lamu, for mercy. Because of their sincerity, Lamu was moved, and actually, this through a channeling, session that brought also China's 10 great doctors, throughout China's history, the 10 great doctors in a channeling visitation. And Lamu was saying, I brought the best doctors to treat Sujun. He'll be fine. And Yeah, actually, during the visitation, Sumu pleaded with Lamu three times, and each time, Lamu gave her, gave some reassuring words, saying, "Oh, yeah, don't worry, everything's fine." But when the visitation ended, was over, basically Lamu brought Sujun back to heaven. Okay, so that's Sujun left this world. So basically, 18th Patriarch, he carried out his mandate for 17 years, from 1930 to 1947, before returning to heaven. Now, you can say because of the political situation in China at the time, right, the communists, they were kind of fighting the nationalists, and they were winning and taking over the country. And in fact, especially like in the northeast of China at the time, that's kind of where it's kind of started. And so a lot of Daokin and even like some Dao elders, Chenan, those people, predecessors, grand predecessors, they were caught and executed by the communists. Okay, because obviously the communists, this is against their, I mean, they're so anyone who they're against any kind of beliefs, these faith beliefs in God. Okay, so but if the patriarch had been caught and executed, that would definitely been a terrible day for Tao, because most likely it would have been very demoralizing to all his followers. Okay, so leaving. So you can say that leaving the world in 1947, because in 1948 is kind of when the communists kind of took over, 48, 49. It was probably an arrangement that was made in heaven. That God had saw what was coming and didn't want something bad to happen to 18th Patriarch. And then also Matriarch Sumu, she only stayed another year. Like I think she left in 1948. Basically, she only presided over like 10 of these repentance classes in China before she left. Basically, she was moved to safety in Hong Kong. Okay, and then later to Taiwan. Okay. Now the subtle meaning of that Sichuan Wang Tao Xing is also, you could say that also refers to our true nature or Buddha nature. All right. Let's see. I think so this time is up here. So okay, so we'll end it here, and then we'll continue next week, I guess. Yeah, because there's still a lot more. Although in terms of the background, I mean, this is a lot. There's a lot of background kind of information here, but yeah, later on it'll go a lot more quickly. Okay, so all right. So if I had said anything wrong or not very satisfactorily, I asked God and the Buddhas, and especially Maitreya Buddha, for forgiveness, and also I asked the Transmitting Masters lectures for their corrections. Thank you.